Hi, I'm Park Howell, and welcome to the Business of Story, where we have a brand new ebook waiting for you, absolutely free at businessofstory.com. It's called The 5 Stages of Grief in Telling Your Business Story, How to Overcome Story Fright to Grow Your Leadership, People, and Organization. In it, we help you deal with things like denial, that story actually works, or anger, I don't know how to tell a story, bargaining, I'll do anything but tell a story, depression, I have no good stories to tell, and finally, we're going to land you on acceptance of the power of story in your life. You'll become a master storyteller when you go to businessofstory.com and download your free ebook right now, and then start living into your most potent stories.
I thought it was just a stupid picture of a pig in the ocean. But after hearing that story, I had to have it. Now I wasn't just buying a picture. I was buying a story. Story literally made the picture worth more money to me.
That's what businesses are about. People buy brands. People buy stories much more than anything else.
I work with a lot of big enterprise companies, but let's just say I always tell folks, drop the PowerPoint, close your laptops, start with your story.
If you want people to get engaged and you want people to act, you have to tell them an emotionally powerful story. That's with great characters, it's with uncertain outcomes, and it's with high stakes and drama.
All business strategy is a story.
I don't know about you, but whenever I think of New Zealand, I think of Bilbo Baggins and the Lord of the Rings. It is a sterling example of a story connecting with a place. On today's show, I have the Gandalf of Down Under storytelling, Chris Herbert of Kingswood Skis, who will share the magic of how to use small batch stories to move mountains. I first learned of Kingswood Skis last September when Chris downloaded her DIY brand story strategy workbook from the Business of Story. Being a skier myself, I was intrigued to learn about Chris and her husband Alex's approach to manufacturing handmade, small batch, barely expensive powder snow skis in Littleton, New Zealand, just outside of Christchurch. So I invited her on the show. After I got the prompt that she had downloaded their DIY workbook, I visited their site. To my surprise, it was one of the best sites using brand storytelling that I'd come across. For instance, this about why Alex started the business. Alex Herbert started Kingswood Skis after years at the repair bench. It was the late 90s. Fat skis were scarce, and Alex was disappointed by existing ski construction. Eventually, he took matters into his own hands. The first step was to take his favorite and only pair of skis and cut them into 86 pieces. He was committed. The first press was made from 2 pieces of rolled steel sandwiched together with car jacks. Though the start was rough, the aim has always been to make the best skis possible. The hard part wasn't making a ski, it was making a great ski. That took 3 more years. The search for perfection continues. New shapes are constantly added and old ones tweaked. The process is continually improved. Alex still makes each pair himself and runs the business with his wife, Chris. We have no aspirations to be giant, just to be great, Alex says. So I don't know about you, but that copy over beautiful mountainous slopes of powder white snow really captured me. Well, Chris authored that beautiful bit of brand storytelling, and I was completely intrigued to learn how she was using our storytelling tools to strengthen her already formidable storytelling chops. What I learned, and you will too, on today's show with Chris, is how she uses the magic of small batch storytelling to connect people and truly move them to action. You'll learn how Chris brings her customer personas to life using narrative descriptions like I had not heard before. How she brings people together, collects local history, and promotes cool places through location-based audio storytelling with her new ourstoriesproject.org, and how it all revolves around finding the moments that connect people and capturing and sharing those stories with the world. So let's go down under with one of New Zealand's most powerful story wizards, Chris Herbert. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
It's always so much fun to do this around the world because here it is, 3 o'clock my time, Mountain Standard Time on Tuesday, and it's already 11 a.m. tomorrow in New Zealand, right?
That's right. Time travel.
It is. Blows me away. Where are you in New Zealand? Where are you coming to us from?
So I'm on the South Island in a little town called Littleton, which is just outside of New Zealand's second largest city, Christchurch.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I would love to get down there. Still haven't been there, but it is totally on my bucket list. So glad to have you here on the show. You know, we were just talking, you had downloaded our DIY storytelling workbook several months ago. And I always, when I see that ping come in that someone's downloaded it, I go and check out who they are and what their brand is and whatever. And it led me to Kingswood Skis, handmade skis there in New Zealand. And you, I've got to tell you, have one of the best websites I've ever read. Being a ski enthusiast, that helps too. But you bring an awful lot of really terrific, crisp storytelling to that site. Is that all you?
It is. I mean, the story is not mine, but the communication of it is. So that's a business that my husband and I have run together since 2005 with 3 years of R&D before that. So it's pretty much our whole adult life. And it is a very small business. It's very personal. And so it means that we can take advantage of telling our story in the way that we want because we don't have anyone else to answer to, really.
So you get into the Kingswood story, Alex Herbert, who he literally tore apart his one and only pair of skis into 86 pieces so that he could build a better ski, presumably.
Yes, well, it was more about him wanting fat skis because this was the late 90s and a sort of fat ski revolution was happening, inspired by snowboards. It was all about more surface area, more float. So these were only available to pro skiers. And Alex was kind of a pro skier. He was getting free equipment, but he wasn't good enough or big enough to get the prototypes. So he was frustrated and he decided that he wasn't going to wait for the fat ski revolution to fully arrive. He was going to get in there and make a pair of skis for himself. And so he thought, I need to see what's in these skis. So he chopped it up and he measured every little bit. And he used that for the basis of starting from scratch. So today you wouldn't have to go that far. You could just look on YouTube and there would be a million resources for how to make skis and where to buy ski materials. But in the late 90s, that wasn't the case. And so he had to do it all from scratch, which was probably a really good process to go through.
And how many skis do you make in a given year now?
It's probably between 75 and 90, depending on the year. So it's very niche, very boutique.
Yeah, I was going to say, small batch ski outfit. I mean, that's great. Do you sell them around the world or just there in New Zealand?
We sell them around the world. So our website is our store and they're all made to order and they're all custom made. So it's really a process of getting in touch, telling us about yourself and how you like to ski. And then we help you work out which ski in our range. And then Alex adjusts the flex to suit you. So that's part of the construction process.
And how long does it take to get a ski once you've got it ordered?
It depends how busy we are, but we usually say 3 to 4 weeks is about a good amount of time to plan.
And did you feel like in writing this site that it was maybe easier for you to tell the story because it was your story coming down? I mean, it just seems so transparent and so simple and so much fun to read. It's hard for companies to do that.
Yeah, well, I guess that's where I had an advantage because I'd been a communicator my whole life and a journalist for 20 years and had started doing some copywriting and marketing work for Kingswood. And so kind of got more interested in that side of it. And so it was really easy for me to write. I just sat down and wrote it in about, 10 minutes because I was rushing. But yeah. I know from working with clients that it can sometimes be the hardest thing. The thing that I sometimes struggle with, I'm getting better, is writing a bio for myself. So I know what you mean in terms of sometimes telling our own story is the hardest thing we can do. I had an advantage because writing is what I do. But yeah, it is an important thing for companies to get across. So can I just say that I think the resource that you've built is brilliant, the Own Your Story workbook. I downloaded it. I did it for Kingswood Skis. And the time I spent doing it was so useful to be guided through and be required to spend, I don't know, I probably didn't give it as much time as I could have or should have, but I probably spent 40 minutes really thinking about it. And that is something that small businesses find challenging as well, just carving out that time.
Well, that is fast. Some people spend 40 minutes per section. So, well, then we're going to have to take you through the Story Cycle lightning round at the end of this program to see how your Kingswood Ski brand story came together, if that works for you.
Yeah, I'm up to that.
All right, but let's go back to you and your bio, writing your bio. Take us back to a time in your life, and it may have been when you were a little girl or older, that you knew communication was in your journey. That's something. Take us to a scene that happened that said, you know what, I think I'm going to go into journalism.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I did write my first book in, I don't know, first grade or something, and
What'd you call it?
Mrs. Frog Has Company.
Mrs. Frog Has Company. All right.
Yeah, I can't remember the details of it, but I don't think it was a literary brilliance. There was any literary brilliance in there. But I did say to my parents from that point that I wanted to be a writer. And so, but the story doesn't have any like spark or passion. I think that came later. I don't know why. But the story that kind of has been most probably transformative in recent years is to do with some earthquakes. So we bought the building that our ski factory is in, and we moved into it in 2009. And then in 2010, we had a really severe earthquake in Christchurch, and we had to jump out of bed in the middle of the night, and we did the absolute wrong thing, which was run out of our brick building while it was also shaking. But we were fine and safe and just shaken up, but we didn't spend another night in that building from that point. And so the insurance started rebuilding, and as they were in the process of rebuilding, we had an even more violent series of earthquakes that started from February 22nd, 2011. So that was the day that 181 people died in Christchurch from a really severe earthquake. It wasn't as big on the Richter scale, but it just had huge force. And so then we found ourselves with a total loss, as the insurance company calls it. And we were underinsured. So we had to set about the process of first deciding if we would rebuild, how we would rebuild. And so this really became a full-time job. We had to keep Kingswood Skis going, but it meant that my work as a freelance journalist just had to be put aside. And that was a really cool thing in hindsight, because when I went to go back, it just didn't feel right to just do the same thing again. So I started thinking, well, I had already been thinking for a while that the media world was troubled. And it was frustrating being a journalist. You don't get much time you can't invest much time in each story, really, and still make a living.
And Chris, were you a writer for a publication at this point? You weren't working just at Kingswood Skis?
Correct, yes. So I've been a freelance journalist since I studied journalism at university, and I've been freelancing since I was 16 years old. So I had a few full-time jobs in there. I went to Antarctica for 4 months as a science writer. But at that time I was just fitting in some freelance writing around Kingswood Skis and being a mum. But that was how I kind of defined myself in my career, was as a freelance journalist. So post-quake, I started looking for other ways to use my skills, and I kind of discovered content marketing. It's still not that well known in New Zealand. And so I guess this was 7 years ago. It was pretty unknown, and I came across it, and I started reading about journalists who were going over to what I always thought of as the other side.
The other side being online social media world, content marketing world?
Marketing versus journalism. Yeah.
In general. Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I had been asked to do copywriting over the years, and I always found it just really uninspiring. But content marketing suddenly felt like I could get excited about marketing for the first time. And I was reading about journalists who were moving into content marketing and were saying, hey, I've got a bigger budget, I've got a bigger audience, I can actually reach more people, I can tell the stories I want to tell. It's just, it's kind of the same thing, but just the model kind of made more sense. So I started upskilling myself in content marketing, reading books and listening to podcasts like your own, which I discovered. Yeah. And so that was one phase that I moved into, and I still am working in that field. And then the other one is location-based storytelling and sort of community storytelling projects, which I'm really, really passionate about now.
All right. We will talk about that in a minute. I want to go back to this idea of you being a trained journalist. You didn't like going into marketing. Is that because you felt like it was just really selling and kind of trite and superficial? But content marketing actually used your skills as a journalist to dig up and tell the story, much more than just selling something?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So the copywriting work I had was always focused on the company. So how, can I use my skills to make them look good? And I could do it, but it didn't, unless it was a company that I was really, really passionate about, I didn't find it fulfilled me as a writer. But when I started doing content marketing, as you know, the focus is on the consumer. So you're saying, hey, who's this audience? What do they care about? How does that connect with the brand? And so what can we build that audience is going to love? And when you're writing for an audience and you're writing stuff that people will love, that's exciting as a writer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess it's the puzzle creation to the Rubik's Cube of putting that together, of understanding your audience, understanding the brand, and then find a story that actually and authentically connects the two, sharing their same beliefs and values.
Right. So that's the part I had to learn, and understanding how an organization works from the inside out, and how to kind of affect the change, and how to build storytelling into all parts of an organization, how to express the ROI and all these things. That was all the new stuff for me. The idea of writing for people so that they enjoy reading it, that I think I had honed over those 20 years in the journalism world.
Mm-hmm. And now just kind of reframing it, refocusing it on content marketing. So in 2011, literally that earthquake both shook up Kingswood Skis. You guys had to continue to work to rebuild that entity, but then also shook you out of where you were as a journalist and much more into content marketing and growing in that area. Was that also out of necessity, just to help kind of pay the bills and figure out how you're going to rebuild Kingswood?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's always a balance. We're a little bit crazy in the sense that we're both kind of self-employed. So, that makes knowing if you're going to be able to pay the mortgage each month sometimes mysterious. We've chosen that so that Alex can go surfing when he wants, so that I can walk my dog in the middle of the day, so that we don't really have to, fit into anyone else's schedule. And that's the downside of it. But yeah, I am definitely thinking about how to get what I love to match up with what I can make money from, and how that's going to work in the long term. So I think about passive income and, building online courses, also location-based audio storytelling. I think there's a lot of work to be done up front for me there, but it could, career-wise could be a good direction.
Now, you talked about an interest, too, in helping brands find money within their marketing budgets to go out and solve real-world problems via strategic content marketing. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Okay, so I'm still this is kind of early stages of thinking here, but basically I looked up some numbers the other day, and I saw that the advertising spend globally is over $500 billion a year. So to put that in context, the United Nations budget is $14 billion. So that's peacekeeping, that's UN development. So this is a vast sum of resources. And if you think about how much of that, and I don't know, this would be an interesting thing to do some research on, but how much of that is spent annoying people? I mean, interruption marketing. Lots of people talk about it. You're trying to watch something and something pops up and you go, oh. And so there's huge amounts of sums of money being spent annoying people. What if that money was spent making the world a better place in some way? Mm-hmm. What if a brand said, right, we're selling outdoor clothing. So what we're all about is people being outside and having a better life through exercise and connection with nature and other people and stuff. And they said, right, we're going to take all of our interruption advertising and we're going to put it over here into a budget that helps people actually enjoy being outside more. And then they told the stories about that. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know how to calculate the ROI on that, but my instinct tells me that everyone would be better off if that was the way it was approached.
Well, and when I think of a couple brands that do that, at least over here in the States, Patagonia in the outside world does a brilliant job of content marketing and connecting people with, the world. They don't do a whole lot of advertising. When they do, they even suggest don't buy this jacket if you've already got one that's working well for you. But they've got a lot of wonderful videos, audios, you name it, on their website of talking about the impact that you're having in the world. And then I also think of REI and their Opt Outside campaign on Black Friday. Are you familiar with that program?
I am. And those are the two companies that I would say are doing the best in that space
Yeah.
And I love how Patagonia pushes it even further and goes to activism. I mean, I'm not convinced that that's a role of a company, but why not experiment there and see what can happen? I mean, I think I'm really interested in conscious capitalism and in the idea that enterprises are the most powerful entities on the planet. So if we have a problem and we need change, we really need them to be a part of it. And we do have a few problems.
Yeah. Well, and if you're following the capitalistic model too, what is that? That is get up, go to work, come home, maybe not completely fulfilled. So fulfill yourself through consumerism, buy something, buy lots of stuff, get in debt so that you can go back to work again to make enough money to feed the capitalist machine. Now, I'm not coming down on capitalism. I'm just saying that is, a basic tenet of the operation. So when you ask, do companies have a place? Is that a role? It sort of feels like to me, yes. I mean, if they are going to consume resources and energy to build and, and create products around the world, ship them around the globe, they are definitely having a significant impact both environmentally and socially. And to me, anyways, I feel like they do have a role in taking care of things, is owning up to that impact and then even helping their consumers consume wisely in the process.
Oh, absolutely. And, you talk a lot on your podcast about employee engagement, and you just used an example there about someone who goes to work and comes home dissatisfied. So what if, Joe Bloggs had a marketing job, and when they went to their marketing job, their job was to make the world a better place and tell the story. They might come home a little bit less dissatisfied and therefore need to buy a little bit less stuff. And I'm an idealist, I know, but the world needs us.
I'm with you. The world, make a better place here in Hollywood. They're certainly lampooning that notion in some respects as maybe being a little bit maudlin. I don't know if you've ever seen the TV show on HBO called Silicon Valley.
No, I haven't.
Yeah, it's very, very funny. A send up of Silicon Valley. And when I watch it, I even cringe because I see myself in some of their characters when they're making fun of some things like that. Like these tech geeks out there creating a product and say, we've got this new algorithm that is here to make the world a better place. And it became a punchline for them, which is kind of sad, but it's also kind of funny because it's not enough just to be talking about that. And a lot of people in this purpose-driven brand day and age do suggest that they've got a story around making the world a better place, are not actually doing that. So when we can point to brands that are making an impact, a la an REI or a Patagonia in the outdoor world, then it's like, there's the people we want to be following, or at least we think are headed in the right direction.
Absolutely. And I think one of the most inspiring stories to me is the story of Ray Anderson of Interface Carpets.
Oh, yeah.
Are you familiar with it?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
I mean, this is not a glamorous industry. This is, carpet tiles made from oil, basically. And back in 1996, when one of his Californian salespeople came to him and said, Ray, the customers are asking what we're doing for the environment. And everyone just thought that was such a funny question. But Ray said, oh, well, we better have a meeting about it. And in the meantime, this book landed on his desk called The Ecology of Commerce by Paul Hawken. And he started reading through this, and he started reading about basically the facts about a finite planet that we live on. And he thought to himself, oh no, I'm part of the problem. What I do one day is going to be illegal. And so he went to that meeting on Tuesday and blew everyone out of the water by saying, here's what we're doing about the environment. We've just made it a goal to have our business put back more than it takes out. And that was radical in the 90s. It's still quite radical if a company said that, and a publicly listed company. But he set about doing it, and he achieved it. And the company made more money in the process. So it just shows that all the excuses people say, oh, we have to look after our shareholders, or, oh, we'll be in green once we make some money, is just not valid as an excuse.
Are you seeing brands down under doing this? Are there some around you that you're impressed with how they are telling their purpose-driven brand story and then living into it?
Yeah, I think that the area that excites me most in New Zealand is the social enterprise area and small startups. So I think I would like to work more with those companies to help them get that brand story right at the beginning, because you don't have to re-engineer the purpose. They've got the purpose. They're ready and raw with the purpose. For large organizations, you have to kind of dig through a lot of layers of onions before you kind of start to pluck out that purpose part, which you can build up from. And it's harder work, but I am working with a few clients. I would love to see that sort of transformation.
And do you find, I guess maybe like I have found it quite often, you can't just go right to the purposes. You have to go and do some digging in their brand story and figure out the elements. I mean, can this company really live into a deeper purpose, and what does that look like to them, and how does it actually pay homage to their origin story or where they came from? Sometimes they're so close to it they don't even realize it until you, as the storyteller, bring it into focus for them.
Yeah, that's a challenge, trying to get through an organization. I mean, I have some clients where there are some incredibly passionate people around the organization, but the organization as a whole doesn't have that feel. So my approach in that instance is just to start where I find the good stuff and just start telling the stories of those passionate people who are able, or to help them articulate that, and then start telling those stories. And then it kind of has a flow-on effect where people go, oh, that's cool. I didn't know we were doing that cool stuff. And then they're more inspired to do cool stuff, and then, it can kind of spread like a virus.
Mm-hmm. One way I found to get to that is if you can get to the leaders, to the people, the actual founders of the organization, and you get a chance to interview them, and you ask them kind of the same question I asked you at the top of the show is, can you take me to a time, a moment, or a scene in your life that told you were going to be doing what you're doing today? And at first they'll say, no, there really isn't one. It just all kind of came together. And then they take a moment. They go, yes, there actually was a time when. And then they tell their Mrs. Frog Has Company book story from the first grade. Or it could be a story that was a little bit later in life. And in that story, you find the true person. You find what really drives them and propels them forward. And they have forgotten about that moment. And then you expound on that moment and see how it is actually reflected through the brand and what they're already doing. And again, they may be so close to it that they don't even realize it. And in every single case, those moments are very human, they're very positive, and they're out to actually do good in the world, not just to rape and pillage and sell you something. And when you can connect to that authentic moment or scene, instead of looking at the overall story, then you put a few of those scenes together and the brand story starts coming together and you find purpose within it. Like, case in point, we're working currently with a very, very large insurance company out in Hartford, Connecticut. And I got a chance to talk to the two primary founders of it, who actually purchased 7 different companies, brought them together, a nearly $1 billion deal. And they both grew up on Long Island, both hardworking guys. Turned out they both became Wall Street wizards, and they were sort of both surprised that they had that kind of success, and then pooled their funds together and brought in some other investors and built this company. Well, the more I started digging and asked them, one of them, I asked them, tell me about growing up in Long Island. Said, oh, very, very blue collar town. We never had any money. My dad owned a Greek restaurant, and I worked there at age 7 as a busboy and a water boy, and then a busboy, and then a dishwasher, and, went on up through waiter, finally, assistant manager and whatever. And I asked him, I said, from all of that, what did you learn? What is like the number one thing you learned? And I thought he was going to say hard work and perseverance, that kind of thing. But you know what he said to me, Chris? He said, I learned the value of people. And it just kind of hung there for a minute. I said, explain that value of people. He goes, yeah, the value of people, the customers that would come in and how my father treated them and the relationships he built. And everybody always got the best out of him. And in return, he got the best customers. And so to me, it's always underscored to me the value of people. So now here's a guy who, young, has made a fortune in Wall Street, presumably, is on into the insurance world. And he's not valuing money. He's valuing people. And I'm like, there is a purpose-driven point that we can build upon for this overall brand. Then when I talked to his counterpart, his partner in it, when I asked him, he also grew up in Long Island. They lived 5 miles of each other, but didn't know each other at the time. His dad was a florist, and his mom worked in mortgage banking out of their home, did some mortgage work out of their home. And he said that he always had this innate understanding of the value of things. He goes, I would trade baseball cards, and I knew that I could trade it or give $2 for a baseball card, but I knew it was worth $10 or $15. And he goes, I don't know why, but I inherently have an appreciation for what things are worth. So these two guys, one, the value of people, the other, the value of things, not to the exclusion of people, but just understanding what things are worth, have come together to build this really amazing company. And I said, you know what? This is not about the wonderful financial instruments that you offer. That's the price of entry. But this is like, what is the value you bring to life, to your customer's life? How can you create an appreciating life? And also now they have a purpose, and they're looking at building programs around green bonds, that are outperforming the S&P 500. They're looking at sustainability, renewable infrastructure that they can be investing in as a part of their asset management for their overall organization, but also approaching their people internally and their customers differently through this whole view of don't value the financial instrument as much as you value the experience it affords you to have in life. Because the real measure of anyone's success is, it's not that old saying of he who dies with the most toys wins. It's more like he who dies with the most joy wins. And that's truly what they're in for. So we have a whole purpose-driven thing around that instead of just giving you insurance and annuities.
And that's a brilliant place to start with a content strategy too, isn't it? So
yeah.
When you frame all the stories you want to tell or all the value you want to add through content, if you've got that in your mind, instead of, just kind of trying to pluck out some general content buckets that are related to your product, you have much stronger strategy going forward. That's really cool. I love the way that you kind of did some journalistic digging in there and found their purpose. It's sort of part psychology. Do you feel like you've got people on the couch sometimes?
Oh, totally. And I never meant to do that. But when I started approaching brand development using the story cycle system, which just makes you approach it from a very humanistic standpoint, not only you as an agency, but you as the owner and founder, all of a sudden they have to stop and put away features and functions. And they got to think about the actual human impact they're making. And it does. One guy actually called me a brandthropologist, which I loved. I found someone else already had that term out there, but that's really what it is, because the brand, you think about it, comes down to the human being, to the people. It's not about the product. Like your skis, Kingswood skis. Sure, you build a fabulous, fat ski, that small batch, all the care in the world that goes into it. That's the price of entry on the global stage of ski building. But it's the people behind it, isn't it? And it's how you go about it and the beliefs and values that you have that you will never get rid of, because it's what drives Kingswood, and it's what drives the Kingswood story too. So it's getting brands to understand and appreciate that. That's always the tricky part, but it does take a lot of journalistic digging to get there. But I find the easiest place is to get people to stop thinking about their story and start looking for their scenes.
That's nice. Yeah. I mean, I'm interested in the anthropology side of it. So I'm reading Sapiens at the moment. Have you read that?
No. What's that about?
It's about the history of the human species. And
oh, that's all. Okay.
yeah. And the key distinguisher, as it turns out, is basically storytelling. So it's a very well written book. So I'm just loving the language in it. But he says, you could never convince a monkey to give you his banana in return for the promise of endless bananas in heaven. But you can convince a human to do that. And you convince them with a shared narrative. And that is how humans were able to have groups larger than 150, which is kind of where apes and monkeys top out, is to get thousands of humans working together because they believe in the same story. So it's incredible. It goes all the way back to, 80,000 years ago when Homo sapiens wiped out Neanderthals using the power of storytelling. So you'll love it.
Oh, I'll have to read it. I'm just in the middle of Hitmakers right now, which is probably a little less deep than Sapiens, but I will take a look at that one. It's fascinating, but it goes back to what you talked about at the beginning of the show too, is finding that shared purpose, that shared narrative, so that even if you are a brand, and you're out there making money, because you got to make money to stay in business, why not be able to use that for good? and help educate people and help them have an impact in this world as well.
Yeah, and I'm dealing that he calls it shared fiction, which is interesting. And he says that a corporation is a legal fiction. That's what lawyers call it. So it kind of relates to what you were saying before about the founders, is because a lot of brands talk about, this brand is this, we are that. But in fact, a brand is not a thing. It's a lie. It's a fiction. But the people are real. So if you could wipe out the royal we and decide that you're only going to talk about people, how would that change brand storytelling? That could be you'd have to say real stuff.
Well, and what are we always trying to do? We're trying to take this fictional entity that is a brand and trying to humanize it. We attach jolly green giants to it so that you anthropomorphize it, or I can never say that word. But, we literally... and when we go through, as you did with the story cycle, you get to chapter 5 when you chapter 6, enter the mentor, you want to bring a personality to your brand. So you look at Carl Jung's 12 basic primal personality archetypes and you determine which one best reflects who you are as a brand. Sometimes you have one or two supporting archetypes, but we're always trying to humanize brands. Why? Because it plays into the human narrative much better.
Yeah, and it's fascinating, isn't it? Because even though I am a storyteller since I was 6 years old, that workbook forced me to think about things in a new way, which was really valuable. So yeah, I think you've built something really cool there, actually. And
thank you.
That lots of people get value from it. I bet the biggest challenge is putting aside the time.
Well, and that's why the very first thing you've got to answer at the beginning of it is a due date. When are you going to have this done? But, even if you work halfway through it.
Past that.
Yeah, what's your date on that? Did you miss it?
Blank. It's blank.
But even if you start taking it, chunking it, you start with the first chapter, just getting through the first chapter, you clarify your position in the marketplace. It helps you, as Chris Lockhead would say, it helps you start defining your category. How are you different, such as Kingswood Skis? How are you different in the global market? What is it that you do and what category definition can you own that is different than anybody else?
Yeah.
Small batch. Handcrafted, wide, fat skis for it. And do you have a specific skiing? Are these for immediate skiers, experts only, or can anybody buy these?
Anyone can buy them. We tend to do what we love. So we have, we don't build carving skis because we are happier out in the powder.
The big powder, yep.
Yeah, but we can do it. And we're actually looking at it, at developing a sort of more piece-orientated ski this year. But because we don't have ambitions to grow and we sort of push back against that whole capitalist notion that that's important, we can say that these skis are different because they're made by that guy.
That guy being Alex?
That guy being my husband, yeah. And he is, he's a unique character, as we all are. And he's got a certain way of doing it, which makes him great at it, which is why that is the part he does. And that's why I do everything else for him, because he can't, do the taxes and the accounts.
All the fun stuff.
Well, he could if he had to, but he chooses to go surfing while I do it. Now we've got a very good agreement, and I've wanted to support him so that he could focus on the part that he loves, and I can do the bits of it that I like. So it was interesting. Last year we decided to combine forces a little bit more, and I did a content series for Kingswood. We got photos from Unsplash, and I kind of started there, and I looked at photos and I thought, what does this make me think about? And then I wrote a series of articles, and we did a series of limited edition top sheets, and we called it Something to Think About. And we sort of said, these skis are a conversation starter. So when you're riding up the lift and someone goes, why have you got a giant trash heap on your skis? And say, oh, actually, did you realize that rubbish, particularly food waste, is, our biggest challenge? And I put all this facts into it, and it was so fun for me. I discovered some really cool stuff, like that David Attenborough promotes women's rights as the answer to overpopulation, which he's really passionate about because he cares so much about the natural world. And so the reason for that is that in countries where women have access to healthcare and education and employment and bank accounts and choice, the population is not increasing. So super simple ideas. But so that related back to a top sheet that had a picture of a really busy Asian city and one that had a beautiful jellyfish on it. So I started going, I wonder how jellyfish are coping in warming seas. And it turns out that they're doing great. They don't mind breeding in plastic. They don't mind warm acidic seas. And so we did an article about how jellyfish will inherit the seas. And so it was just a starting point. So that was quite fun to finally, it's like the cobbler with the broken shoes metaphor that Kingswood Skis is often my last client.
And when you're talking about top sheets, you're talking about the top artwork on a ski. Is that right?
Yeah, the artwork on the top.
So you're using your skis as environmental triggers, we call them, in sustainability. So you're out there and someone looks down and looks at your jellyfish skis. It prompts that question. And if your buyer is really into it, then you've armed them with the rest of the story. So that they're like skiing billboards, subtle skiing billboards.
It was an interesting move too, because we got a lot of unsubscribes to our list. But I went, I thought everyone was going to love this. Some people took time to write back and say, this is awesome. I love it. And a lot of people just unsubscribed. But I realized that was good because I needed to get the people off the list that don't fit the brand.
You're filtering your
purpose.
peeps.
Yeah. So it's kind of scary watching all those unsubscribes come through and go, what have I done? I'm supposed to be helping.
Oh, I know. I always feel terrible. I feel like I've been thrown out of a party when people start unsubscribing, or worse, they're leaving my party, and that's just the worst.
Yeah. It's great for me to have a brand that I can experiment with. And you've got the same, don't you? You have this idea and then you go, right, I'm not going to make someone pay me for this until I can test it out.
Yeah. And I tell you what, my ideas always seem so fantastic in the shower. I see them playing out. And then, we do them and like, crap, man, that took a lot of time, a lot of money. Why isn't anybody downloading that? That's just.
Well, this is bringing us to my passion project, which is called Our Stories Project. Do you want to go there?
Yes. Let's hear about ourstoriesproject.org, correct?
Yeah, which has recently arrived on the World Wide Web. The project has been going for a while, though, and it is inspired in a massive part by StoryCorps project. Mm-hmm. Do you know about that?
Oh, yeah, from NPR or National Public Radio, yeah.
Yeah, so Dave Islay, who was an NPR journalist, started by putting a sort of shipping container size object in Grand Central Station and inviting people to come in with someone that they care about and do an interview. And it came from the idea that he had discovered as a journalist that interviews are incredibly powerful experiences, and he wanted to make that available to more people. And so he got a TED Enterprise Award and got $1 million to develop an app. So I've used that app to interview my dad, who was a U.S. Air Force general, and we've, spent this incredible time asking questions of each other that you just don't do in ordinary life normally. And so I love that project, and I wanted to do something with it. And so I finally had a brainwave of how to go about it. And so our local Littleton primary school, where my son goes, we started interviewing people who grew up in Littleton. So they come into the school and we get 2 or 3 kids. I've now got like 70 volunteers because the kids are loving this. And they sit there and they ask questions, which we've pre-written, and the people tell their stories about what it was like to grow up here. And the kids' eyes just get wide. It is amazing. We've had a 98-year-old woman telling about sending her brother, husband, and father off to the Second World War. When they came back, Littleton is a port town, so there was waterfront strikes, and basically the whole town had no income for like 7 months. And the government was, pushing hard and making it illegal to support people who were on strike. And, these incredible stories just aren't known by the kids that go to this school because, like a lot of places, Littleton has become gentrified. And while there are lots of old school Littleton people, there's now a lot of professionals who work in the city and artists. And, it's still a great place, but like most places, it's in danger of losing its stories. So the kids are recording the stories. That alone is brilliant. We're recording them, so we are building an oral history collection. And then the third part is the kind of new bit, and I'm looking for funding at the moment for this. I'm going to be working with some of our own really great radio journalists in New Zealand, and we're going to build the stories curate them into a walking tour. So this will be kind of like, through the eyes of a child of this town, and you can walk through and you hear a range of stories. So we've interviewed people who, 98 or 23, and they've all grown up in Littleton. They've all had different experiences, but they all relate to these places. So we can then build the stories into the places. So when you walk around, and there's great technology already available to make this location-based, hands-free. You're having a real experience. You're not looking at a screen.
That's good. And you're using the StoryCorps app to do this?
I'm actually not now. I've got some professional recording equipment, and I'm just recording them. But I always have to credit that project because that was a massive inspiration.
The inspiration came from them. And I've got the app too, and it really is cool. If for you listeners out there, if you're looking for a way to capture your own family stories, or your mom and dad are getting on in age and you want to go and have those kinds of conversations Chris was talking about, and capture them very easily. So that in a lot of cases, they don't even realize you're recording them. You let them know, but they're not freaked out by a big microphone. That StoryCorps app is a really, really cool way to go about it.
It's so good. When I did it for my dad, I thought, oh, well, I'm a journalist. I'll just, I don't need their questions. And I went through and I was like, oh, that's a good question. Oh, that's a great question. I ended up using all their questions. I mean, we got off track and I started coming up with follow-ups and stuff, but I was so impressed. And that's probably because it was, built by people who are been asking even better than me at asking questions. Yeah, so it is. And they've made it really easy and anyone can just pick it up and figure it out. And I did originally want to use that for the kids so that they would become familiar with it and maybe go home and interview their parents as well. But just working out the technical audio side, as I'm sure you can appreciate from doing a podcast, you sometimes have to keep changing until you get it right. Yeah.
I was just in San Diego last week and we had a little Zoom recorder on us and I had two mics connected through an XLR and we did it right out on the balcony and it actually turned out really good. It was noisy and we had trucks and we had a loud security guard and we had seagulls going over and the guy I was interviewing luckily was a corporate comic. So he had fun with it. But it's great when you get out there. You don't have to worry about the production value. Just get out there and capture the voices. And as long as they're clean enough and people can hear it, it's okay if they're not perfect. But if you're capturing that person, like you say, in their environment, man, there's nothing that beats that sort of ambient audio that you get in the process.
Yeah. I think one of the other possible incarnations of our stories project would be getting neighbors to interview each other. So in New Zealand, you have a cup of tea. And so I can imagine that one. And in my mind, I hear the clinking of the teacup in the story, and I just haven't quite figured out how you build it into the second part. But
in NPR, they're experts at that, of course. Whenever they're out in the field, they always start with some sort of ambient audio just to get you there, to set the scene in your mind, and then away you go. And I suppose it goes back to that Sapiens book. We are human beings, and stories are more important to our survival than our opposable thumbs. So if you can ignite that imagination, that theater of the mind through a little bit of audio here and there, it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, theater of the mind, that's a great phrase. And that is why I'm really excited about location-based audio storytelling as a medium. And I've got a few different projects underway in this area, and I love the idea of thinking of it as an experience. So, we've got this old piano outside the supermarket, and so I want, when you walk past there, that the piano starts playing and surprises you, and just all these different elements that you can build. You can actually make people, because they are in the real world, you can make them pause and do something in the real world, go to talk to someone in a shop or ask a question of the guy who's sitting outside the cafe, or, so that's where it gets really exciting to me, is when you're creating experiences that are based on story.
And do you see this intersecting back over your work with purpose-driven brands, even Kingswood Skis? Do you see a way that brands could use this? So not only capturing the location base of Littleton, but how a brand could actually participate in this?
I got really excited last week because I saw that Foot Locker had introduced location-based storytelling in store. So what they did is they kind of made their shoes like a museum wall. And then, so I don't know pro basketballers at all, but apparently there's one behind every shoe. Yeah. And so they got those guys to talk and tell a story about what's important to them and why how you can see that in the shoe. So now people can stand in a Foot Locker and they can look at this cool basketball shoe, and then their favorite basketballer is in their ears saying, hey man, this is what I did. This is why I did it. What do you think? Pretty cool. Want to buy it? Sort of thing. And so it's a great medium for connecting stories because it's really personal. It's in your ears. It's not screen based. You don't have to read it. You don't have to watch it. You can be out and about. It's the same reason that podcasting is becoming so popular in audiobooks, because you don't have to devote every sense to it.
Yeah.
You can just give it your ears. Yeah.
So couldn't you get your buyers of Kingswood Skis to be a participant in this, and they're riding up the chairlift and they're describing their favorite run on your skis into their StoryCorps app, and then they send you that audio and you could have them right on your website. And it may even be someone who's backing the jellyfish or the trash, the rubbish skis, and talking about why that's important to them while they're skiing on some beautiful hill, and you're catching all that ambient sound at the same time.
I love that. I'm writing this down because that is great. Conversation captured on chairlifts.
Yeah.
That would be brilliant. I love it.
Chairlift chats.
Yeah. And then if you're skiing on your own, you can listen to the chairlift chats while you're on the chairlift.
And they can give you tips. I was on your website looking at the hills. You've got the map, which do you prefer? Do you want the intermediate run, the beginner run, the extreme run coming down? Well, you could, in the chairlift chats too, ask those extreme skiers, where are the best places to ski, or what are the conditions like in that? So they could be talking about what they like about the skis, why it fits their personality of skier, and also about the terrain, because everybody likes to be an expert, don't we?
Yes, but no one likes to share their secret powder stashes.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true. But they will show off for you on the moguls. I know that for a fact.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you get this perfect intersection of storytelling, from purpose-driven brand storytelling to now your location-based through your ourstoriesproject.org. So with that, can I take you through the 10-question lightning round on Kingswood Skis as you've developed it through your DIY story strategy workbook?
Okay.
All right. Now, this is going to attack the journalist in you as well. So we're going to start number 1. And we kind of talked about this for Kingswood Skis. What do you do differently and therefore better than anybody else in your industry?
Right. So we hand make custom skis by Alex.
Handmade small batch custom skis by Alex. I mean, that's pretty, what else are you going to say?
Okay. So I'm looking at the position statement that I wrote down.
Yes.
And I've said Kingswood Skis is the number 1 boutique custom ski manufacturer in the world. We give people access to flow on snow while it lasts, which was a reference to climate change. We give people a way to purchase without guilt by buying from a company with values, where everything goes into creating a great product. Yeah.
Love to simplify that. I like where you're going with it. Now, could you even add one more differentiator there, is say the very beginning of Kingswood Skis is the number 1 resource for what? Custom skis?
I said number 1 boutique custom ski manufacturer in the world.
Okay, so that's a big ask. But what if you said the number 1 boutique custom ski manufacturer in the world from New Zealand?
Yep.
So give yourself.
Yeah, we've kept New Zealand quite high in our branding.
Yes, you do, and for good reason too, because you have great storytelling around it. So that's a place that you could really, with handmade small batch skis made by one dude, Alex.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's like, oh, tell me about that. So let's go to number 2, your audience. I always ask the question. So you do something differently and that makes you better. Who cares? Who's the buyer? Who's your primary audience you're going after?
Yeah, I found this one a little bit tricky. So I put 3 audiences down. One is the gear guy. I've called him status seeker. So he's like, he just wants to buy the best skis. Yeah. That's the main thing. I've got the grown-up ski bum. That's basically us. So this person has lived with powder in their veins. They've managed this despite not being wealthy by prioritizing skiing over everything and learning how to find deals and work the system.
Yep. Beautiful.
And I said, this is us, if we're honest. They want great skis because they love skiing more than anything. And then the Kingswood brand fan, and I've said this person will pay more for our skis because they buy into the story. They're brand fans who love us unconditionally. And we have got a lot of those. And in the time of the earthquakes, it was actually remarkable. People contacted us from all over the world and said, can we help by buying a pair of skis? Wow. And we said, you can, but we don't have a factory. And they said, we don't care.
Yeah.
We know you'll pull it off. And we got orders for skis that we couldn't make.
And
Heaps of them.
That's the kind of brand recognition and brand engagement you want, because you guys are authentic. You're living it. And I love how you've given names to, you really personified these three: the gear guy, the grown-up ski, and the Kingswood brand fan. That's beautiful, because it really brings character now into your overall story, and it's placing them at the center of the Kingswood brand story. Kingswood's not the hero here. They are, and you're helping them meet their needs. So it takes us to number 3. What's at stake here? What is it that this audience wants, or these audiences want? And you kind of, I guess, described it in describing your audience.
Yeah, this was a lot of work. I skipped it.
Oh. Well, but you did kind of say it when you were describing each of those audiences.
I guess I did. So for one guy, it's like the status. For the gear guy, it's the status. For the grown-up ski bum, it's just the love, of skiing. And for the Kingswood brand fan, it's the trust. It's built on the trust in us, and that they buy it based on that.
So that we'll keep moving on then, because it is a lightning round on chapter 4. Then the disruption. Why don't they have this? And why aren't they getting this in other brands? So why don't they have the trust? Why don't they have the love the ski bum has, for your brand, and the status skier? How come they're not getting that status from other brands? Because they can go out and buy expensive skis other places.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, this is the one I really need to crack, I think, in order to get the brand, to get our perfect balance going, which is always hard, because if we were too popular, that would put a lot of pressure on. And if we are not popular enough, then we struggle. So I don't know if it's even possible to get it perfect. But I think in New Zealand, brand awareness is quite high. There may be some misperceptions. I think the tricky thing is that we're not expensive enough for the status guy to feel like it's a really status item. We're too expensive for the ski bum to feel like he's getting a good deal. And so the Kingswood brand fan is, our large customer base, and they come back again and again. And then for them, we get people who write to us and say, I really want a new pair of skis, but these ones just won't die. And they go for years and years, and they ski hard on them. And, they love that about us. But we've not built in any obsolescence, which we're not going to change that. That's really important to us.
And you've kind of answered then chapters 5 and 6 here just by going through that and that enter the mentor, what it is you mean and what you're about. Let's just jump ahead since we're running out of time. Chapter 9 is the moral of the story. What, Chris, do you believe in, since you are really looking at, the purpose-driven brand? What are the beliefs and the values that Kingswood holds dear that you feel connect with your audiences?
Yeah, well, ideally that will be ideas about environmental awareness and action, ideas about economics and capitalism, and kind of, I think, we have really strong ideas about what a better world would look like, and we're trying to do everything we can to be a part of that. And so people who agree with us will continue to be brand fans, I think. And we're just sort of starting to explore communicating in that space. Mm-hmm. We do another content project, which I'm doing slowly for Kingswood, which has an audio component, is called We Ski. And I just do these long form interviews with people who are skiers and have been either their whole lives or part of their lives. So one is a friend of ours who's a paraplegic, and skiing is now the only thing that he can do completely on his own to get the adrenaline buzz that he spent his whole life mountain climbing and chasing. And so I think there's something really big there in the idea behind what skiing offers people beyond status or fancy holidays, that as a life of a skier, what does that mean? And it's different to everyone. So capturing a range of those, and ultimately, so far it's a slow moving blog series. Eventually I would like to see it as a coffee table book and a podcast series. So.
Well, that's great. So Alex builds the skis and you build the stories.
Yeah, that's nice.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for being here on Business of Story. I appreciate you taking the time, especially since it's Wednesday there and Tuesday here. I just can't get over that. I love that so much. But really fun having you here. I hope to get down under there in the next year or two. There's a number of people I've got to meet, and I would love to swing by Kingswood Skis and meet you and Alex.
Oh, you'd be very welcome, Pac, and thank you so much for having me on. It's a great honor.
Oh, thank you. And thank you all for listening to this edition of The Business of Story. If you would like to download your own DIY brand story strategy workbook like Chris used for Kingswood Skis, just go over to thebusinessofstory.com. You can download it there. It's a $45 investment, but it can lead to millions for your brand equity. And remember, too, that we've got a ton of tools there for you and a brand new ebook, The 5 Stages of Grief in Telling Your Business Story. I take you through 5 exercises to help you really own your story so that you can have the impact with your personal brand and grow your influence and help you grow your professional brand through your organization, increasing sales and growing your people while you're at it, just by simply embracing and having fun with those true stories of the human impact you're having and doing a great job of telling them to the world. And we're going to be back here again next week with another story artist like Chris to help you craft and tell compelling stories that sell. And until then, remember that the most potent story you are ever going to tell is the story you tell yourself. So make it a great one. Thanks for listening.